welcome to the Real CP Show. I'm your host, CP. And today's topic, these dozens of violent Nairobi Kenyan male teens. Oh, by the way, sorry, male and female teens assisted with the murdering of a Kenyan teen boy. The responsibility of the blaminess on this heinousness was blamed on gang violence. Now, see, one of the questions is, where are those type of non-good brothers and sisters from Kenya that have the nerve, talking about the ones applies to flee Kenya and run over to America and have the nerve to try to talk about Black Americans that don't flee? That try to talk about Black Americans. Oh my goodness, I mean, we come over here, we work hard, but you couldn't work hard in Kenya. We're so educated, but you couldn't keep your education in Kenya. And how many numbers of Kenyans? I'm talking about the coon version of Kenyan version that fled, or within the fleeing version, that came to America, was able to go to these various colleges, right? Slide under the banner of Black, right? Off of Black Americans who already built this country up before they would even a knuckling of thought about in this country, like various other African immigration type personnel, the ones it applies to, right? You see how this game goes. And they do not want numbers of Black Americans to roast these tether versions of fleers, right? See, well, I'm not talking about the small amount of numbers of Kenyan brothers and sisters who arrive in America. They are grateful for some of the opportunities because this is a globalness, right? So they have a gratefulness. They're able to come to America and be able to try to do some beneficialness of opportunities. But at the same time, they are still grateful. And they still show the respect because they understand that Black Americans set the blueprint for other people to be able to, other types of Black skinned type personnel relating to this topic, various types of Afro-immigrationists and other personnel to be able to come to America without having to go through a Black American pain, right? That's how it goes, right? All that education. Some of these Kenyans one supplies to have the nerve to try to talk down upon Black Americans, but they fled. But the education that many of them got in America, they're not going to go back and fix numbers of tribalism problems going on in Kenya. They're not going to go back and fix numbers of criminality going on in various parts of Kenya. They're not going to fix various types of corruption going on in various parts of Kenya. They're not going to be able to go back and fix the high unemployment that is affecting numbers of Kenyan and Nairobi youth. You said that goes, right? So they don't like numbers of Black Americans who know the little taxes they try to play, right? So let's go ahead and share my screen for this first particular video or article, because I'm setting the foundation of this part where we want to talk about. Okay, let me get that off there. Okay. Now, you see this right here first. Kenya force leaves Nairobi to tackle gang violence in Haiti. Let me read this again. Kenya force leaves Nairobi to tackle gang violence in Haiti when you got gang violence that is out of control in numbers of various parts of Kenya and certainly various parts of Nairobi. You cannot laugh at this stuff, man. You cannot laugh at the absurdness of this. But who's the people behind the veil? Mm-hmm. A Kenyan force to lead UN-backed multinational mission to tackle gang violence in Haiti departed Nairobi late Monday. This was sometime last year when he was talking about this. Today is November 26, 2025, by the way. So this interior minister, such and such person said, despite a court case against the deployment, the East African nation offered to send 1,000 police to stabilize Haiti, alongside forces from several other countries, but the deployment has run into persistent legal troubles. Some 400 officers left Nairobi at 10:50 p.m. 1950 GMT time aboard the national carrier Kenya Airways en route to Haitian capital Port-au-Prince. Honored to see off the first batch of the contingent of the National Police Service officers who are part of the historic United Nations mission to Haiti. This particular person said in a statement, accompanied by images of the officers at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. The group comprises elite officers from the Rapid Deployment Unit, General Service Unit, Administrative Police, and Kenya Police. The deployment came hours after President William Ruto, an enthusiastic backer of the mission, bid a ceremonial goodbye to the officers on Monday. At that particular time, media was not invited to the ceremony in Nairobi, where Ruto prayed for the officers and handed them a Kenyan national flag, according to the footage shared by the presidency. The mission is one of the most urgent, important, and historic in the history of global solidarity. Ruto told the officers in quotes shared by his office, your presence in Haiti will bring hope and relief to communities torn apart by violence and ravaged by disorder, he said, adding that the rest of the force will join their colleagues soon. What was that? So, still major gang violence going on in parts of Kenya, especially among various parts of the youth who has a very high unemployment rate. Gang violence going on in various sections of Nairobi, which, by the way, the largest slum in Africa is the Kimbara slum, or the Kimbra, some people would say, a few miles off of main Nairobi. So there is some nerve again of some coon versions of Kenyans, the one this applies to, who have fled from Kenya to America as fast as possible, because the people they look at as their gods, for people within certain parts of Panama's culture, that they look upon them as their gods, and they'll do whatever they need to do for their God, to appease their gods, to lie, to slur, to show hatred, right, to Black Americans. And you were like, huh? But these supposed to be some of the cousins, right? Be based upon the skin, right? That's supposed to be the camaraderie toward with Black Americans. No. They are fleeing for reasons, right? They're fleeing from their own type people. They're fleeing from tribalism, their own tribalism problem. They're fleeing from their own corruption, right? They're fleeing from their gigantic still unemployment, right? They're fleeing from various parts of questionable infrastructure, the places it applies to, right? They don't give a dang about various people in Kenya themselves, because Kenya has several dozen tribes. There is no pan Kenyan tribes among each other like that. It's their own individual tribes doing their own individual things. There are several dozen languages that are spoken also in Kenya. Actually, more than that, but various tribal languages spoken in Kenya. I mean, Nairobi. So there is no pan Nairobi tribe love. There's no pan Kenyan love among each other. And certainly there is no true pan Africanism going on in various sections of Africa, right? But they want to run that game on certain types of Black Americans, talking about modern day versions. And the thing about it, back in certain parts of the 80s and the parts of the 90s, there were numbers of Black Americans who were like, hey, man, Pan Africanism. And there was some truth to that, right? Now, there was no reciprocity from various sections of places in Africa that was saying, hey, we're going to sit there and go over to our brothers and sisters in America, and we're going to demand that they get reparations. We're going to demand they be treated equally. Nope. Said that unequalness, right, was going on then, and it's going on now, right? But they expect numbers of Black Americans who are still the most openness of any other personnel, culture, background, etc. in America, are the most openness and also the most used. And especially that the ones who have the skin of Black, but don't mean Black America is no good, they're also very dangerous, right? Because they'll play that, oh, Pan-Africanism love when you got numbers of Africans don't only believe in Pan-Africanism in Africa. There's no love from North Africans to South Africans. They ain't like they care about each other like that. You don't have various types of South Africans that's enough to say, yes, we're gonna have some Pan-African love with our Eastern African brethren. Doesn't work like that. You don't hear no Pan-African love from the Eastern sections of Africans to the Western brethren in Africa. They be like, no, we got our own things going on. And they certainly not going to come together for various sections of central parts of Africa to their brethren tribes and backgrounds. They be like, no, no, no. But you see the people run this game on numbers of Black Americans once applies to, right? With this, hey, you know what? Those are our brothers and sisters. No, you sit there and vex the ones, and you sit there and find the ones who are about camaraderie with Black Americans that have robbed in America, which is going to be very few, because the system will not allow many to come to America and be sit there camaraderie with Black Americans. No, they want the coons and sellouts to flee from various parts of Kenya, right? To come over here to put them in certain types of political positions, to put them in certain type of opportunities, to sit there and allow them to go to various parts of HBCUs, slide under the Black banner. Oh, some people didn't know that. Oh, they allowed them to slide under the Black banner. This is how they get all kinds of these various types of opportunities, right? because they want to see, because Black Americans are not immigrants, not one, right? And so they know they can't deport Black Americans like that. So they'll use certain sections of Africanism type personnel to infiltrate various sections in America. They allow them to be put on certain type of, should we say, political parties and organizations. Oh, it's a game. It's an infantile game. And unfortunately, millions within American Blackism still don't know how to play the game. And still don't understand, to my millions the one who does not, with few exceptions, that just because someone has the skin of Black, don't mean they got your back. They don't even have each other's back in various parts of Africa. And you think they're gonna flee over to America and sit there and be in camaraderie with Black Americans? Please, there's a lot more jealousy toward Black Americans who've already built this country from scratch before many numbers of African immigration personnel even arrived in America like that. Right? And again, I'm not talking about numbers of good brothers and sisters, so we're not going to play that game. So the thing about it is, Many of the African immigration personnel, the ones applies to, they have to worry about this right here. Many of them weren't even around. Many of them weren't around when this is happening. Right? But again, how many fled from various sections of Kenya, various parts of Africa? I'm talking about the places it applies to, talking about the one this applies to, the coon versions. Right? Not to worry about this. Not at all. They don't have to worry about this part, and even present moment, they don't have to worry about this.
So if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black. So if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
So you don't hear nobody talk about, well, if you don't vote for them, you ain't African, right? When you hear these different elections going on, certain sub-Saharan African type personnel, I'm just giving an example. In these elections, you don't hear however personnel is run for presidential elections or however political elections. Well, if you don't vote for us, you ain't Kenyan. Because it makes no sense, right? He'd be like, Kenya's made up what? 9,000% of what? Black Kenyans? Now, all the various other Chinese and various other Indians from India and various other Europeans. That's a whole different topic in itself. On that, but we're talking about collectively now, right? So you have fleers, the ones applies to come to America. They have to work. See, they're not talking about them like that. So they get a chance to sit there and ride off the backbones of Black American pain. But when you say, hey, you know what, Pan-Africanism, but you say, hey, so what are you going to do to sit there and stand with Black Americans against this Black American pain that consistently been going for centuries? What are you going to do? This is what they're going to do.
Exit stage left.
That's right. Because they're only trying to sit there and get what they can over Black Americans, right? And they don't want millions of Black Americans to see through the games, see through the tactics. And they know most will not, with small exceptions, right? So let me go ahead and share my screen for this last particular main video.
Now, post-mortem tests on the body of a 14-year-old boy who was killed by members of a juvenile gang in Umoja here in Nairobi has revealed that he succumbed to effects of blunt force trauma. Joshua Kubiti succumbed to injuries at Radiant Hospital in Umoja after a brutal confrontation captured in a viral social media video clip. Police have also arrested 14 teenagers in connection with the murder. NTV's Rose Wangoi has the details.
Hold on. Let's not go right past that. Let's see. How many did they say?
Connection with the murder. After a brutal confrontation captured in a viral social media video clip, police have also arrested 14 teenagers in connection with the murder. NTV's Rose Wangoi has the details.
At Msasa Court in Umoja 1, estate relatives and friends have gathered to console Winfred Kamene, who lost her son in a tragic incident. 14-year-old Joshua Kubiti died on Saturday evening after violent clashes between gangs within the neighborhood. The brutal confrontation was captured in a viral social media video. The deceased was a student at Matungulu Boys High School. A postmortem conducted at Mama Lucy Hospital revealed that Joshua's skull had been damaged by blunt force trauma.
Sio kitu ni very painful kwangu. Joshua alikuwa mtoto wangu kutoka nimzae. Amekuwa mtoto mzuri.
Ombi langu ni Joshua apate justice na hii isitendee watoto wengine.
A total of 14 teenagers, among them 10 boys and 4 girls, have been...
Oh, let's not go past that part real fast. Let's see. Who did they say again?
watoto wengine.
A total of 14 teenagers, among them 10 boys and 4 girls, have been
10 teenagers. 10 were violent young boys, and 4 were 4 violent young girl teens. But at the same time, you got numbers from certain section of Kenyans that have fled to America, the ones obliged to. Won't they take that, how someone was so educated, back to Kenya and stop the gang violence going on over there? Because 9,000% of the people that look like what? Them. So it should be no problem, right? I don't think so. And they know it. They not trying to go back to Kenya. They say they know darn well, please. They not trying to go nowhere back to Kenya like that. But at the same time, they keep trying to pull this little game and tell Black Americans you need to go back to the homeland. While at the same time, numbers of Kenyans and numbers of other sectionality of Africanism, the ones applies to, are trying to get away from Africa. The ones applies to, because there also is a caste system in Africa, right? The haves and have-nots in Africa. The haves are like, hey, that's not our problem with the lower socioeconomic variance of Kenyans in this particular topic, and or other types of Black Africans in various parts of Africa. The haves and have-nots are saying, hey, they're not concerned about them. They're doing what they're doing, right? Let's continue.
arrested in connection with the murder. The minors aged between 12 and 19 were apprehended in a...
Let's not go past that part either. What were the ages?
A total of 14 teenagers, among them 10 boys and 4 girls, have been arrested in connection with the murder. The minors aged between 12 and 19 were apprehended in a targeted crackdown by Buruburu-based detectives and later arraigned at the Makadara law courts. According to police, the teenagers had organized themselves into rival gangs with names...
What?
According to police, the teenagers had organized themselves into rival gangs with names such as Chinje, Mbogi, Badbani, and Silent.
We are not going to relent. Once there is any intending or other using the goons, we are coming for them. We are going to victimize you for the crimes that you have committed, hiring those goons to do the other things that are orthodox to the persons who is purported to be innocent.
Area residents claim the teens have been terrorizing innocent people and unleashing havoc.
Unaweza ogopa juu hujui pale inaweza kupata.
Toka nje wananyang'anywa caps, wananyang'anywa simu. Kama umempatia mtoto simu, ukimtuma kwenda kununua mkate wanamnyang'anya mkate. You see, so hali ijakuwa poa sana. Hadi sisi wenyewe pia wakaaji tunaogopa, manake hata wanaweza kuja kwa milango upate wamevunja mlango.
Hao vijana sio hapo moja wapo. Hao vijana kutoka other wards ama area zingine wanakuja kusumbua vijana mmoja wapo.
These groups have been linked to violent clashes, phone snatching and theft in Umoja 1, 2 and 3, Tena, Inako, Kayole, Kariobangi and surrounding estates. Rozongoi, NTV.
But you got some within certain parts of Kenyanism, the ones it applies to, the ones that have fled, they have the nerve to flee to America, because they know they were nothing in Kenya themselves. Because they was all that, how come they didn't stay there and fix tribalism situations, fix corruption, fix infrastructure problems over there, make Kenya great? Nope. Because this system, again, is utilizing sectionality of certain parts of Africans, the ones it applies to, Black Africans, should we say, the ones it applies to be able to infiltrate certain parts of HBCUs, infiltrate certain sections of politicalness, infiltrate certain businesses, giving them numbers of grants, giving them resources and freebies, and then you add in them being able to sit there and utilize the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. Many of them not even heard of that, but they're also using it, which has been diluted, by the way, but which is the main part was supposed to finally allow Black Americans to be across the board citizens, have citizenship. It was around 1868. So now you get all different various types of people and agendas and groups being able to utilize that 14th Amendment because it has this little watered down, diluted version inside of there. So now you have higher numbers of immigration personnel, including certain sections of Africanism, immigrationists, ones applies to. The ones that's having these kids, unless they have health situations, bam, automatic citizenship. So they know they're anchored to America as well, overall, with certain exceptions. So at the same time, they got the nerve to try to talk about Black Americans and criminality when you got an absurd number of criminality going on in certain sections of Kenya. And Nairobi, again, by the way, has the largest slum in Africa, Kibara. Some people say Kibra. Let me put this again. In Nairobi has the largest slum on the whole continent of Africa, the largest slum, or one of the largest slums in Africa is in Nairobi, Kibara. So when you have fleers versions that flee from Kenya, the ones it applies to, I'm not talking about some of the good brothers and sisters, which is going to be very small because they're not going to allow a gigantic amount of Kenyans to leave Kenya and still have some kind of camaraderie with Black Americans. Oh, no. No, they're using the coons and sellouts to do some replacement in various areas toward American Blacks. Yes. So again, when you asked numbers of them, what are you going to do to assist Black Americans who will get restitution and justice since you want Black Americans to sit there and be down for them? This is what they'll do. Oh, this thing started acting silly again. I don't know what's going on. There's something going on when you start relaying over reality information. It's a little silly stuff happening, but this is what they do. That's right. I thank you for tuning in to the Real CP show.